Hello everyone, greetings from the 7th of Nero, AJ here with another instalment looking a little further into the various armies of hordes. It's been a fair while since the last main horde entry covering a major faction, but nevertheless this one concerns the Trollkin. It remains to be seen what the post-claiming, Requiem and Mark IV settings have in store for them, and since we only know what the new War Machine aesthetic is like, it'll be interesting to see how the War Beast side of things will turn out. Given the Earthborn Dire Troll's entire shtick, one wonders how they'll evolve, so to speak. And while something is at the back of my mind regarding how technology and evolution, I suppose, march forward with time, or rather what these do to the mechanical design of the game's two sets of factions, with the second set yet to be revealed, this will have to wait, at least for now. But in the meantime, easy stuff first, I suppose. Imoran and history have not been kind to the Trollkin, almost no matter where they may be found. It is just as well for those who do not carry the blood of trolls within them and consider the Trollkin friends that the most zealous followers of Dunia are so genial and rambunctious. There would be much more concern for the rulers of the West if the Trollkins decidedly above average strength and constitution were combined with the Pharaoh's general misanthropy and predilection towards plunder. While there are some Trollkin who do express a greater extent of distaste for those who do not live within the Creel, even fellow Trollkin, most I have encountered, both in city and in Creel, are welcoming towards all, Trollkin, Dunian, or otherwise, who mean them no ill. Indeed, thanks to the Tomark Makeri, no few tribal leaders, priests, and elders need little more than a brief but piercing glance to know a visitor's heart. Irksome though this can be, this flash of discomfort is typically worth the Trollkin hospitality, beer and enthusiastic hugs notwithstanding. More pragmatically, it is this aspect of Trollkin culture which makes their hierarchy even work, including among rivals, for there is no explicit or extensive structure of rank beyond the most obvious. Each Trollkin is compelled to be aware of their place in a warband or beside warriors of a different tradition from theirs. Consequently, the general idea of the trolls marching to war can be baffling, but not so much regarding their capacity to do so, but rather the manner in which they attend war. On the face of it, with their warbands centred on the often loose hierarchy of the tribe, one may be forgiven for seeing parallels with their fellow Dunians the Pharaoh, having mentioned them. Both peoples form bands of warriors from the villages, adults armed in a broadly uniform and familiar way, and in recent decades they have adapted to evolving technology as they try to exert themselves upon local rivals or encroaching forces. However, even cursory study shows that while this is the extent of their similarities in the early modern era, and many differences can be listed between them, the parallels between the United Creels and Lord Carver's vision of a unified Pharaoh people proves the years ahead may be of benefit to the Pharaoh-Trollkin alliance, should circumstances allow it to continue. As mentioned, like the Pharaoh, the traditional and age-old core of a Trollkin warband was, and remains, formed from a fair proportion of villages, or a confederation of allied villages, fighting adults, who take up shield and arms as Creel warriors, usually in defence of their lands. The biggest, strongest and most dexterous among the Creel warriors were, and continue to be, assigned to warbands as caber throwers. Caber throwing remains a popular sport among many Creels, in which competitors heft the heavy columns of stone and attempt to throw them the furthest. Champion caber throwers often sought winning in the sport to ply their skills in war, where their crudeness is no weakness given the devastation possible by 1,000-pound cabers sent tumbling overhead. But not only do all Creel's warriors protect their homes and peers, more important than either of these, to most Trollkin, is the Creel stone. A large standing stone weighing several times a full-blooded troll, only the strongest of Trollkin are even able to carry it into battle. But for its mythical protective power, doing so is worth the effort. Oftentimes it is accompanied on the road to war by a retinue of scribes who record the heroic deeds of the Creel's warriors, ready to inscribe it into the Creel stone for remembrance by veterans and future generations. And such is the belief held within the Creel of the stone's sacred nature and power, its presence in battle is highly valued, both for morale and its blessings from Dunia. Still, not all of a Creel's defenders may necessarily be claimed by said Creel as its own. For any number of reasons, Trollkin may be exiled from the Creel of their birth, and yet many feel the need to fight for it when it is threatened. These are the, perhaps harshly named, Trollkin highwaymen. Having lost their peers, neighbours and homes, such ostracised Trollkin often struggled to maintain a living away from their Creel, which led to some robbing travellers or traders on the road, no matter the circumstances. But though most would abide by the laws of the land as best they could where they roamed or settled, they would only be known for those few who lived up to the notoriety of a highwayman. Even so, when wars and conflicts descend upon their fellow Trollkin, many retain their belief in kith, kin and Creel, and take up arms to protect against any aggressor, be they human, scorn, gator, or anyone else. Over time, these outcasts, who came to take pride in the label of highwaymen, were slowly welcomed back to the Creel thanks to the many legends and tales which told of their acts in aid of those who would have turned them away. Nowadays, the martial abilities of these expert scouts and ambushers is both happily lent and happily received by Trollkin elders, especially in a time when the ways of wars fought by other peoples may easily have raced ahead of the traditional Creel's capacity to sustain. However, few of a Creel's defenders are truly born to the warrior's life, and for the longest time most villages had but a few dedicated soldiers among them. These were the village's champions, and to this day they remain a Creel's most important fighters thanks to their extensive skill and experience. Each has a tale of loss or bravery which leaves them unable to set down their weapons when peace comes. But among them are a cadre of highly disciplined warriors who consider it their duty to protect those of the Creel, who cannot fight for themselves above all else. These are the warders, and any who attack a Creel would do well to avoid them, for they would persist in formation until the attackers are defeated, or they themselves are killed, and few who have fought against a band of Trollkin warders would ever say they succumb easily in battle. Leading the champions are their heroes, storied warriors whose names have been etched into their village's Creel stone many times already. Clad in heavy armour and wielding a battle-worn axe or hammer, these heroes are often a Creel's commanding general, and sometimes chieftain, superseding the elders when war comes to the Trollkin, but not always. But no matter their position within the Creel during times of peace, in times of conflict they can be found in formation among their fellow champions or warders. Supporting these varied companies of warriors are many of the remaining Trollkin of the Creel, who fight in different ways, often due to their vocation in life. Shamans, priests, sorcerers, and fell callers, all of whom are Creel's chieftains and elders value very highly, and each with good reason. After a fashion, they all use various forms of magic, but the Trollkin themselves would claim only the sorcerers are practitioners of any arcane art, while the shamans and priests are merely those amongst their number who are blessed by Dunya, and the fell callers merely have a hefty pair of lungs. Such is Trollkin's constitution, fell callers' abilities may as well be magic in the eyes of the more rustic of other peoples. Those who care more for Trollkin culture know the difference though. Sorcerers are marked as different for being albino, and from birth the experienced magic users within a Creel nurture these arcane abilities. Though their traditions are not necessarily as diverse as may be found in other races of Imoran, they are enough to warrant careful attention by elder sorcerers who know the responsibilities which must be borne by Trollkin with magical ability. And while most will gain a little instruction in the use of their magic, this will mostly come in the form of more philosophical lessons, to accept the arcane, understand how it is a gift from Dunya, and to treat it as such, because ultimately their power is theirs alone. The most common sorcerers can be easily identified for their elemental magic, often derived from the region of their birth and childhood. The Northkin sorcerers are known for their wintry magic, while sorcerers of the Gnarls are more likely to be those known as the Rune Shapers, who feel and express their magic from an innate connection with the land around them. The Dunyan Knot, however, is a little different, for they too are an aspect of Trollkin culture which dates back hundreds, if not thousands of years. They are bound to no individual Creel. Instead, they live as nomads, travelling from Trollkin village to Trollkin village, helping where they can or must. These shamans are distinct for their shared bond with Dunya, which they use to protect fighters in combat, or to advise and heal within the Creel, where they might find themselves. Older shamans of the Knot do settle in a village to serve as a spiritual guide, but it is not uncommon to find even the most wizened and frail of such Trollkin wandering with their younger peers and students. More than any other, the Dunyan Knot represent the connection between the Trollkin tenets of kin, kith and Creel, and goddess. As to the fell callers, if any voice is to be heard on a battlefield, it is theirs. They are the first and last cheerleaders of the Trollkin war bands, with loud personalities to match. They often wander among the Creels, bringing festivities wherever they end up, which can be a source of tensions with local leaders depending on how drunk they get. Despite their troublemaking off the battlefield, however, their impact on it is never disregarded by any Trollkin commander. Their cacophonous roars raise morale, give strength to continue the fight, and exhort fellow Trollkin to great feats of arms. Naturally, not all Creels are the same, and many will differ in quantities of champions and sorcerers they have at their disposal. Some, though, have what one may refer to as regional specialist levies, which may be common to those villages found in certain parts of Imoran, but not others. Particular to the northern Creels, which can be found in the highlands of Kador, are the Northkin forces, especially the rather eclectic Fire Eaters, who take the stereotype of the Trollkin love of alcohol to a paradoxical conclusion, for no few southerners consider it a waste of good drink. Alongside them are the Bear Handlers, who have succeeded in training the terrifying white bears of the mountains to fight at their command. Few Trollkin have been strong-willed enough to have a bear carry them into battle, but if Bulka Kegslayer should serve as an example, Trollkin bear cavalry may come to be in the foreseeable future. However, neither fire eaters nor bear handlers are especially common, for it takes Trollkin of a rare constitution and attitude to excel as either. Instead, what the Northkin are known most for are their raiders. The circumstances of living in the cold and frigid Northlands make the Northkin somewhat less accepting of certain conventions than their southern cousins, and skirmishes and fighting with enemies among both Khadorans and regional Devara cultist tribes is a decidedly different prospect from what those of the Gnarls face against the Signarans, amongst others. Pragmatists out of necessity, the Northkin raiders are armed with plundered blades and grenades and fight using ambush tactics, while after the fighting is done, they loot what they can to replenish their materiel and supplement their current equipment. All of these factors are considered distasteful to the southern Creel folk and even among the Northkin themselves, which explains why most raiders tend to be younger Trollkin, looking to prove themselves in battle to earn a place among their Creel's more esteemed companies of warriors. And while bear riders are not especially common, the buffalo-mounted long riders are also a relative mainstay of northern Creel's forces. Even the Trollkin have limits to their endurance, and many of the more nomadic Creels have long used bison as pack animals to aid them as they travelled the mountainous and rugged terrain of their hinterlands. These creatures are favoured over the breeds of horses found locally, all of which fear the presence of the full-blooded trolls. This naturally led to the bison being a weapon and mount in battle, for the combined weight of Trollkin and buffalo is a terrifying prospect when it bears down on any army's front ranks. Even so, there is also such regional flavour to troops from the south as well. For example, the Trollkin of the Fen Marsh in southern Signar were involved in a much lesser struggle, at least compared to the wars fought by the Creels of the Thornwood and the Gnarls. But even so, their warriors were known throughout Trollkind for their precision and discipline, and whose fighting style was gradually adopted. And this included their favoured weapon, a long hook-ended blade, and companies of such warriors came to be known as the Fen Blades, named for the origin of this particular tradition. With only a few exceptions, these traditions, as have been noted thus far, are centuries or even millennia old, and the Trollkin way of war has not changed much in that time. Any change which has occurred is recent, but also accelerating. The Orgoth occupation of Western Moran, which ended over 400 years ago, brought many things with it, little good. But one area in which there was rapid development was military technology. Blasting powder for artillery and small arms and the warjack compelled the Trollkin Kriels, especially those of the Gnarls, to develop new tactics. But even this would not be sufficient, as the Trollkin Wars would demonstrate. And through the tentative peace agreed between Trollkin and human, leaders among the Kriels took advantage of the brief stability to acquire and learn to use modern weaponry. While cannons and chain guns were adapted to use atop Dar Trolls, the Trollkin themselves adjusted these firearms, designed for human hands, to their own use, with a few crudely cobbled together guns of Creel manufacture, which offend the sensibilities of many a human gunsmith, but among the Trollkin they serve their purposes well enough without the need to care for how they look. For example, being of a much larger size, the trencher chain gun was easily converted into the Troll portable slugger. Trollkin scattergunners went so far as to repurpose light artillery for their own use as frontline skirmishers. Larger artillery, too cumbersome to carry, is also used by the rather jovially named Thumper and Pummeler crews, who fight in a capacity similar to the light artillery crews of human armies. Interestingly, many of the newer acquisitions and developments in the Trollkin armoury have been designated to their smaller cousins the Pigs. Though they are considered more foolish in comparison to the larger Trollkin, Pigs are no less intelligent and, if anything, more ingenious, and quite skilled with firearms as well. Not only that, but it's a great deal easier to convert human-constructed weapons for pig use rather than Trollkin use. On that note, in the centuries and millennia before, the burden of the Creel's protection invariably fell upon the Trollkin, thanks to their greater size, endurance and capacity for bearing arms and armour. But in the last several decades, needs must pigs contribute in what ways they can to help, and they have done so, fully and without reluctance. Due to their aforementioned ingenuity and mischief, more often than not, pigs are set to a sneakier battlefield role, where a Trollkin's bulk is not well suited. Thus, small bands of pigs can be found ranging ahead of their fellow Trollkin scouts and skirmishers as burrowers, bushwhackers and lookouts, all of whom serve the Creel where they can. Case in point, 2 skilled pig trappers, Muggs and Crump, support the aforementioned Grim Angus very ably. Not so able are the Trollkin's even smaller cousins, a term used somewhat loosely, the whelps. Short-lived, especially by Trollkin and even pig standards, childish and immature, whelps are the manifestation of the Troll blood race's innate ability to recover from what would be grievous wounds if inflicted to almost any other. Excised limbs from larger trolls, especially the Dire Trolls and Troll Kings, can take on a simple sentience of their own. Among the creels, these creatures are a source of amusement and annoyance, for the bond of blood exists between whelp and the troll from which their flesh was cut. Due to the lack of true attachment the trollbloods have for whelps though, this amusement and annoyance is directed towards the enemies of the Trollkin, since they are capable of little else. For even the simplest and clearest instructions given to a whelp is no guarantee they'll be followed. But throughout all this, one major factor which has been more important than any fighting tradition or adoption of technology into the Trollkin armoury is the gradual unification which has occurred in the modern era, especially among the southern creels, albeit with overtures extended to those of the Northkin. The united creels of the Thornwood and the Gnarls, led most prominently by Chief Madrak Ironhide, presented Western Amorin with another nation within the Iron Kingdoms, and one which cannot truly go unrecognised, even through the efforts of kings and ambassadors to ignore them. And though said recognition is still lacking in any official diplomatic sense, the wars which came to the Thornwood and the Gnarls forced a southeastward migration of many creels to the unexplored lands beyond the Bloodstone. But even this act of departing for a new home has brought no little trouble, and in spite of the hardships experienced by the migrants, the belief remains that the Trollkin state can be formally established, one which can, for once, be inherited by the next generation.